Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest accomplishment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. It's a quote by Leo Buscaglia.
Relentless, commonly defined as oppressively constant, determined, showing no abatement of severity, intensity, strength, or pace. I believe relentless is an ethos. You're not stopping until you get what you want. You're not taking no for an answer. No obstacle will deter you from your goals. Relentless mentality is where we get to tap into the mindset of change agents, leaders, and icons. My hope is that their stories will inspire and motivate others to transform their mentality in their profession, their personal life, and ultimately their communities. So remember, when it's tough, will you give up or will you be relentless?
I'm honored to have Patty White, President and CEO of Dignity Health St. Joseph's Medical Center. Patty, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Justin. It's great to be here.
Ms. White leads a team of staff, physicians, and volunteers dedicated to providing excellent patient care. Prior to joining St. Joseph's, she served as president of Chandler Regional. She also has more than 20 years of experience at St. Joseph's, including serving as COO, Chief Nursing Executive, and Vice President of Operation. She began her healthcare career as a cardiovascular nurse more than 30 years ago, and talks about how she's done every job at St. Joseph's over the years or through Dignity Health. She is an active board member of Desert Southwest chapter of Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation and A Fresh Start. Mrs. White received her Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Central Missouri State University and her Master's of Science in Nursing from the University of Arizona. Bear down.
Bear down. You know, go Cats.
We're a house divided in my house, but my brother's definitely a big Wildcat. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
So I was hoping you could start from the beginning, Patty. I know you're from the Midwest. And,
I am.
Kind of raised on a farm, and I was hoping you could tell us your story and how you came to Arizona.
Thank you. You've got a great memory, because I know a few years ago we met over lunch to get acquainted when you were coming on the board of St. Joseph's Hospital and Medical Center. And you know, sometimes I don't think my story is all that interesting, but I guess it is unique in a way. So I'm the youngest of four, brought up in a 160-acre farm in northeast Missouri. And you say Missouri, right? And we grew crops and had livestock. And we lived 9 miles out of town, and the town was not quite 2,000 people. So just really, I think, a great way to grow up, hard work. And I think if there's something that is not unique about me, but something that was a core value from early on, is to really work hard. You weren't allowed to, lay in bed on a Saturday morning or anything from a little kid on. You were helping because it was, that was your livelihood. That was how you lived. You grew what you ate. You know, we got to go into town for flour, coffee, sugar, and maybe a soda pop on Saturday. So my oldest brother still lives there, and he still farms some, and he was Farmer of the Year a number of years ago. So it's a great life, but a hard life as well.
Yeah. So how did you get into nursing? Like, where did you see an example of being a nurse? I kind of understand the hands-on for farming, hands-on for nursing, but where did that come from?
Well, interestingly enough, my parents were like, we don't know what else is out there, because they had never traveled, they weren't educated, but they're like, there has to be something more than this. So they always encouraged me to go to college. Well, I hate to admit it, but at that day and age, women really had basically two choices. You could be a teacher or a nurse, or that's what we thought our choices were. And I considered being a PE teacher, because I was always loved sports and, did all kinds of athletic types of things. But my older sister, who I adore, is a nurse. So I followed in her footsteps, and I remember my father telling me, you can always get a job and you'll be able to take care of yourself.
Wow. Wow. So Arizona, how did that happen?
Well, my sister that I just referred to.
Big sister. Okay.
Yeah, big sister. She moved to Arizona. So as soon, and so in high school, I started visiting her during the summer, and I fell in love with the desert. The wide open blue sky, saguaro cactus, I thought were like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And so as soon as I finished my undergraduate degree at CMSU, I moved to Tucson, got a job as a nurse, and then started going to graduate school at the U of A.
Wow. And so How did you get into the Dignity Health system?
Interestingly enough, so I hate to admit it, Justin, because it's probably longer ago than you are old, but 34 years ago. So I got from Tucson to Phoenix. I got married and my husband was here, so I moved to Phoenix. And so I looked for a job in the want ads of the newspaper. I didn't really know anything about St. Joseph's. Went and applied for the position. And the recruiter was like, I don't know if you're really qualified, but I'll have you go interview with the head nurse. Well, happened to be the head nurse was a graduate student fellow of mine in Tucson, and she didn't recognize the name because I had gotten married, so she told the recruiter I was probably okay to hire. So that started the beginning as a cardiac nurse, and then it's just been I've been blessed. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, and so many things have happened at St. Joe's over the last 34 years, and even in the last few years, it's changed.
Yesterday.
Yeah, tremendously. So what do you think has been, the transition or the biggest obstacle or piece you had to come through as a nurse in the system, turning into an executive and then the CEO of the hospital? What was the difficulty there for you that you kind of had to overcome?
I think one of the hardest things is when you work with a peer group and then you're selected to maybe move up and then you become their boss. I think that you have to be very careful because you really can't be the same sort of peer or colleague that you were in the past, but be very respectful and honor that relationship, but yet then hold them accountable, be respectful. And I had several, different opportunities to do that. I think that everyone handled that very gracefully, and I can't say that there was any big, hurdles, but I think that's something that if I were to give advice as people in organizations are moving up, just to, don't get too full of yourself and remain humble.
Yeah. So it's apparent too, right? Healthcare has a hierarchy. There's physicians that usually dominate the system. You're also a woman.
Right.
So how did you overcome some of those stereotypes or barriers in such a hierarchical system that is in healthcare over the years? And what has really been your key to success in getting people to look at you for the content of who you are and not necessarily you being a nurse and a woman in healthcare?
That's a great question because, I've never really felt that it's made any difference in my career. I think one of the things at St. Joseph's, kind of growing up there were a number of physicians who could remember when I had a real job and they viewed me as a good nurse. So I had clinical credibility.
Yeah, you were in the trenches.
Yeah, and there's still some that remember that, to this day. So I think I think too that I've always was very honest and open with them, so have been trusted by them. And I have, there's been a couple of times where I would say a few have been kind of like a bully. And what I have found is address that and stand up for yourself. And generally speaking, it never happens again.
Sure. So what about changing your mindset, and obviously you have the clinical component of being a nurse, but then learning the administration and going through that transition. How did you overcome that and how did you learn that?
Well, I think a lot of it was on the job. I did do, courses and went to conferences. I did get my fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executives where you have to take an exam, and I studied actually because I didn't want to tell anybody I was doing it and then fail, right? So, I've done a lot of on the job. I've had surround myself with great people. I don't, with a chief financial officer that's strong, a strategy officer that's strong, so the whole team really complements itself. So I think the leader, I need people around me that know a lot more in their field of expertise than I do. But it's being able to get people to go along, being able to set that vision, and really being a people person.
Yeah.
Because people can tell if you are or not.
Oh, you connect right away with everyone, so I definitely see that. So you had the COO job, Vice President of Operations, Chief Nursing Executive. Which one was the most difficult kind of transition or where you learned the most?
Well, I think the Chief Nursing Officer position in any hospital is the hardest position because you're really responsible for the patient care. And nurses are a majority of any healthcare system, and to make sure that everybody's, practicing evidence-based medicine, following policy, the hiring. It's a very important position in an organization, and one that nursing really looks up to. And so it's a critical role.
So my wife's a nurse.
I do know that.
What would you say to a nurse that's may watch this show and have the dreams and aspirations of seeing, a chief nursing executive at a hospital that they work with, that they want to do that one day? What can they learn, or what advice would you give them?
Well, what's been so unusual, I never thought in a million years I would have this role at a major healthcare system it's like Dignity Health, right? I didn't have these career goal aspirations. So my advice is always do the best in the job that you're in, and if a door opens, be willing to take a prudent risk.
Yeah. Step off a ledge a little bit.
Yep.
Be uncomfortable.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So when you transitioned to CEO, when was that?
So about 9 years ago, I went to Chandler Regional as the president and CEO, and then my boss, Linda Hunt, I got to get her name in this, right? That's always good, right? Good point.
We're going to get Linda on this one day. Linda, when you're watching this, I'm going to call you.
Yeah, if you name your boss. So as she got more, she was the president and CEO at St. Joseph's, and she took on, as you know, more and more responsibility. And as Dignity Health in Arizona grew, she really needed to relieve herself of day-to-day operations at St. Joseph's. So she asked me if I would come back to St. Joseph's, and of course I was thrilled to do that. However, I fell in love with the East Valley, with Chandler and Mercy Gilbert. So that was 6 years ago in May.
Okay. So I know you don't like to brag and talk about your accomplishments. Can we talk a little bit about St. Joe's and what you guys have done over the last 6 years and where you're going?
So, I was thinking about that, there's probably one thing, and this probably is not going to be what you think I would answer. So we opened St. Joseph's Westgate, I think about 4 years ago now, and I was sitting at a reception, and at the front of the reception was a table with the Sisters of Mercy, and there were 5 sisters at that table. And we have many traditions, as you are aware of, blessing of the hands, blessing a new department that opens, prayer services at the hospital. And I was like, what are we going to do when all the sisters retire? And actually, since that time, we've lost one sister. So I came back and talked to Sister Madonna and said, we need to develop a program. So we've developed a program now we call Mercy Affiliates that are employees within the hospital that have that mission, value-based passion for carrying on the traditions. And they apply, thoroughly vetted with a hard interview process, and then selected, and they go through 3 years of a deep dive in the history of the Sisters of Mercy, Dignity Health. And so now we have 4 Mercy affiliates, and we're getting ready to select a couple of more. So we'll be able to carry on all those traditions. So I think it's making sure that the mission lives on.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing I really appreciate about Dignity, and you can feel it when you walk through. The mission, the culture, the people. It's apparent. I think that starts with you, Patty, and I think you sharing your story about how you started in all these positions and really can connect with people. I think that's apparent through the organization, and so I definitely commend you, and that is awesome. So,
I mean, there's lots of things. I'm very proud of our patient experience.
Yeah.
We get kudos, highly recommended. As you know, being a board member, you see everything, so the quality metrics. We've grown a lot of programs. You talk about the Barrow Neurological Institute, world class in the area of neuroscience, Norton Thoracic Institute, largest lung transplant program in the country in 10 years. And so we're really trying to grow our services. We call it destination because we're a downtown kind of inner city hospital to provide services with excellent physicians and staff that people will go by community hospital for our services.
So 34 years you've been in the healthcare game. Where do you see it going next? Where do you think healthcare is going to evolve to and transition to?
Don't we all wish we had a crystal ball when it comes to that question? So you know, you live in this space. It's really about creating value. And for us as a health care administrator and acute care focused, that's been my life. That's what I love. It's really adding the value with the quality, the patient experience, and driving down the cost. Because there will be more and more bundled payments. We're going to get paid for an episode of care that covers, 3 to 6 months after a patient leaves our hospital and our care per se. So I think that's going to happen. I think there'll be more risk as far as upside downside risk for physicians as well as hospitals. And you better be achieving quality in the patient experience.
Yeah. So
and there's not going to be any more money.
Yeah, yeah. So we're I think everybody's definitely seeing that.
Right.
So before we switch a little bit of the gears, can we talk a little bit about Westgate and what you guys are doing at Westgate and the expansion plan? So I think most people in healthcare know what's going on at St. Joe's.
Right.
They know Barrows, but I don't think a lot of people still really understand the jewel that's going on in the Northwest Valley at Westgate. And so could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks for asking about Westgate. So that's our baby hospital. So I think it was about 4 years ago we opened. It's small, and we consider it, I'll use the term feeder hospital for St. Joseph's. So we have full services there. It's at the 101 in Glendale, so right across from the Arizona Cardinals Stadium. And so currently we're expanding. We're going to have a cardiac cath lab, take care of cardiology patients. And then we just finished plans to expand to about 130 beds. So it'll be a nice sized community hospital, full service, but yet if anybody needs a higher level of care or certain specialists maybe that aren't at that hospital, it's a easy, quick transfer to St. Joseph's. We're on the same medical record, the same radiology platform, so it's an ease of transfer of information.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that side of the valley, there's such a need. It's growing, and so I know everyone is really excited about Westgate. So we're almost at the end of our time.
Okay.
So I have a lightning round of some questions.
All right.
And so, the first question I want to ask you is, what motivates you now? You've been in healthcare 34 years, and so what motivates you now every single day? It's
funny you asked that because I was talking to my husband about that last night. And Justin, honestly, it's all internal. Yeah. I'm not really motivated about the money. Now, Linda, you don't have to hear that part, but, it's, I think, working with the staff, building programs, and it's maybe a competitive drive that I have as well.
Are you still running at 4 a.m.?
Yeah, 4:45.
Every day?
Not every day, 3 days a
3 days,
week, but
okay.
I do other things, spin classes,
Oh, wow.
lift weights, whatever. And that helps give me the energy that I need for the position.
Okay. So who inspires you today?
I think there's a lot of people, and I've had, I see patients. I make, as you know, rounds pretty much every day on patients. I see patients and their families that really struggle and have to overcome the horrible injuries or illnesses. They inspire me. Okay. I see staff that work so hard. They inspire me. And my faith inspires me.
Last question.
All right.
So what are you the most proud of?
In my whole life? My family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your son just was married? And
yes.
Congratulations.
Beautiful, elegant wedding this last weekend. So 1 down, 2 to go.
Awesome. Patty, thanks for coming on.
Thank you
awesome.
so much.
Appreciate everything you do for the hospital and our community. It's awesome having you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw today, please subscribe in the links below. And remember, never to quit, always be relentless.